Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, number one, sorry we're late. That's on me. I was shooting something on the other side of campus and underestimated the amount of time that it would take me to go there and back. What was the thing that I was shooting? Well, you will find out a little later on Saturday when we post it. On with that. So, Tony, I was thinking during my nice long walk back, surprisingly long walk back, in fact, from the other side of campus, thinking, between you and I, we've been doing the Michigan Monday column on the Ozone or various other sites over the years, and then the Michigan Monday episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast since 2003, I think. This is a first. I don't think we've ever done a Michigan Monday on a Saturday before, but oh boy, did Michigan have a day.
They sure did, and it could have been much worse than the 31-12 final over Texas. I'm sure most everybody watched it. Go ahead and throw your comments and chats in the chat, and we will get to all of that. But overall, I think this is very much what we expected. It was just a matter of would it get this far out of hand. I went with 27-13 before the game. I'm sure you had Texas winning comfortably as well, and everything that we thought would happen with Michigan after seeing them in week one, I think all of that was further confirmed this week with just the lack of offense overall, the lack of downfield passing. I did not get to see the fourth quarter. I was in the car driving to the game, but I did get to hardly hear the play-by-play of the Michigan broadcast because it was just very just very low talking about, and I think that's a fumble, and no, that's an incompletion. So not very lively. So I did not see that last touchdown. But overall, Davis Warren throws for 204 yards, completes 67% of your passes, and it's like, oh, not bad.
Yeah.
But that tells nothing of the story.
No, I was listening to the Michigan broadcast. I watched most of the first half at home and then drove over to the stadium at halftime and was listening to the first part of the third quarter on the Varsity app. I'll give them a plug. Great product, free. Can listen to all sorts of different Michigan or different college football radio broadcasts. Listen to the Bowling Green broadcast for a while while that game was still interesting. But you don't ever want to comp anything to Jonestown, Tony, but the vibe around the Michigan radio broadcast in the second half really told a very specific story where I felt like I was having the action described to me. And just the tone of voice and the presentation told me also an awful lot about how things were going.
Yeah, and also, I don't know if we're listening at the same time, but Jason Avant is the sideline guy, and you've got Steve Hutchinson.
Yes, yes,
one of the former linemen. I think it's him. But they were both being asked by the play-by-play guy, I think Doug Karsh. In 1998, you lost two games and still won the Big Ten. And then Avant, in 2007, you guys lost Oregon, and you still had a chance for the Big Ten. And really trying to shine this one up when there's not a lot to shine here. The Texas offense could have done worse. I kind of think they packed it in when they realized we've got enough points.
Well, Texas did to Michigan what Michigan did to lots of teams last year, where you looked at the opposing offense when what they were doing against your defense and said, well, they treated them like Michigan treated Eastern Carolina last year. It was they were up 24-6, 24-3 at half or early in the third quarter. And so 24-3 at half. And at that point, it was like, okay, walk me through the scenario where Texas does not turn the ball over 5 times, that Michigan scores 21 points in the second half. Even if they shut Texas out in the second half, walk me through the scenario where Texas doesn't hand the game to Michigan and Michigan is able to score 21 points, because I did not see a path to that. And then as the second half played out, no one saw a path to that.
No, and that first drive was pretty indicative of how things were going to go, even though Texas came up empty. They get down inside the 10 or whatever, they miss a field goal. But just picking up third down after third down, Michigan thinks they've got to stop, and then Texas would just go ahead and pick up the first down. I think it was demoralizing, and then they get through it, and it's like, hooray, we made it. It's like, that was just the beginning. Yeah. And there was no punts in the first half for Texas. Quinn Ewers was really, really good. They ran the ball well enough. They started to just push Michigan around down low, and I think we expected more from the Michigan defense. Wink Martindale, I've glanced some of the Michigan message boards. He is not a town favorite right now. One of those reasons was, I don't know which quarter it was, if it was the second or third quarter when Texas basically just pounded them in the red zone and scored on a down there. But like Mason Graham was a defensive end for one snap at some point, and then they get into the red zone, and it's like, let's bring the backups in. And this is the wrong time to bring the backup defensive lineman in to take out Kenneth Grant, to take out Mason Graham, and see what happens. And you saw what happens.
Well, the problem that they had was they couldn't get off the field. When Texas was, at least 7 for the first 9 in third downs, they ended up, 10 for 16 on third downs. If you're giving up 2 out of 3 third downs basically every, more or less over the course of the game, you're gonna have a lot of trouble having guys stay on the field. 36 passes, 32 runs for Texas. That was 68 plays for Texas, and they were north of that. They were, I think, in the 40s in the first half. It was, I think, the time of possession and number of plays run evened out a little bit in the second half after the game was kind of functionally over. We got a super chat from Mike Farino that we're going to jump in real quick here. I really wish Davis Warren was on any other team. I'd wish him all the success in the world. As it is, I can't root for him. He's an inspiring story. He's a cancer survivor and a former walk-on, and it's this is the kind of guy they make movies about. But he's not having the kind of season you make movies about. And no disrespect to him, they had a guy who, for better or for, there was plenty of for better and plenty of for worse in the J.J. McCarthy experience over the years. But he was a first-round talent. He got picked in the first round, number 10 or whatever overall by the Vikings. They don't have a first-round quarterback. I don't know that they have a draftable quarterback on their roster other than, maybe Jaden Davis. We'll see what Jaden Davis turns into. But I don't think Jack Tuttle or Davis Warren or Alex Orji is getting drafted as a quarterback. And that's a problem. That's one of those things that we looked at in the spring and kind of went, is there help coming in the portal? And there was not. And this is another one of these situations where you looked at the records that Michigan media folks, a lot of them were picking, and it was like, am I missing something? Because I am perfectly willing to admit, like, hey, Tony, believe it or not, I'm wrong sometimes. Like, sometimes there's stuff and people see something and I don't see it. I am not 100% on this stuff. But I was like, boy, I must be missing something. And about halfway through the second quarter, I went, nope, I was not the one who was missing something.
Well, and when they didn't really go after a quarterback in the portal, then you think, well, maybe Alex Orji, they can work with that, because you're never thinking it's going to be Jack Tuttle. You're never thinking it's going to be Davis Borden, Jaden Denegal, Jaden Davis, all of the different guys they've got. Like we all assumed it was going to be Alex Orji, and because we assumed that, you thought, well, he's going to be throwing better than he did in the spring. He had some okay moments in the spring, but also some really bad moments in the spring, just throwing in the spring game. And I'm more than anybody else in the world, I'm going to tell you, don't judge anything based off of one spring game.
Correct. Yeah. You don't want to judge anything based on one spring game. You don't want to judge anything on week one. You don't want to overreact to stuff. But it felt like we saw confirmation of a lot of the stuff we expected to see out of the Michigan offense, because the quarterback play, they don't have a guy whose recruiting rankings suggest that, hey, other than Jaden Davis, who's a true freshman, who's not probably going to be able to do anything significant this year. Other than him, you don't have a guy whose recruiting rankings suggest, like, hey, big things are ahead. You got a bunch of just kind of like, well, this guy was in the recruiting databases, and they very clearly don't trust Alex Orji to throw the ball.
Not even a little.
Jack Tuttle has been banged up, so if Jack Tuttle's healthy, is Jack Tuttle the starter right now?
What have you seen from Davis Warren to think that it's going to get better? Granted, again, complete 67% of your passes, 204 yards. He is what he is. Do you give him some more time? Do you have much choice? I mean, you've got Arkansas State coming up. That's fine. That may be a get-right game, build up that confidence.
Oh, boy, it better be.
Before USC comes to town, and you're going to need points. So I don't think right now is the time to make a change. And although driving in during the fourth quarter, Doug Karsh said something about Davis drops back. I'm thinking, Jaden Davis, they put him in?
Yeah.
It's no, it was Davis Warren. I thought it was going to get interesting. No, it's still not interesting. There's there's just no reason to expect the offense to suddenly become explosive. They're going to earn everything they get, and they're going to need some help along the way. And before we get to the super chat, I don't know what it finished with, but at halftime this season, through 6 quarters of play for the Michigan Wolverines, 21 targets to their wide receivers, 69 total yards. Now it's going to be a little bit inflated now because
I'm sure there was some soft coverages in the second half, and
but
just
even
keep it
still,
in front of you.
With that inflation, it's still not going to be very good.
Right, Colston Loveland, the leading receiver again. Samaj Morgan, the leading wide receiver, 5 catches for 45 yards. The offensive line is not anywhere close to the normal standard that Michigan has established over the last couple of years. So they can't run the ball quite as well. The running back room is probably not as good as it has been in the last couple of years. There is not a Blake Corum on this year's team. And the wide receiver unit is not as good as it has been in the previous years. It's like, well, Colston Loveland can do a certain amount of stuff. He had, 8 catches, 70 yards, forced a fumble today, Tony. That was a big day.
Good one.
I'm stealing your joke, sorry, but it was a good one. It was a good one. It was just the offense is just kind of like, that you cannot call someone up from AAA. You've got who you've got at this point, and I don't know that there's a significant path to a significantly better offense for them in the rest of the season.
And before we get to Ryan's super chat, the one successful drive Michigan had there, they were pulling out all of the stops. They had the flea flicker, then they had another like hidden ball kind of trick, just trying to hide some things and get some I don't know, not false yardage, but get it any way they could. Yeah. And it's always a tell when you're doing that early that you are very, very concerned about your situation, and you can't live like that. And so you saw what happened, and there's really no respect for this Michigan offense. Like Texas was not really concerned at all with anything. And then you thought, well, Alex Orji is the changeup guy, and the way they utilized him in this one was bizarre because we've seen him be a much more successful player in this one. The third down play towards the down here towards the goal line area where they've got him in, they brought him in, and they've got Donovan Edwards next to him, and then they send Donovan Edwards in motion. It's like, well, you've just taken away any kind of disguise.
Either it's going to be a run play or it's going to be what they call a trick play, which is what happens when Alex Orji tries to throw the ball. They have gone from smash to trick or treat as an offense.
Yeah.
So here's the super chat from Ryan Dawes. I know you will want to talk about this, but was this more Michigan or Texas? And I think the answer to that is it depends. I think the Michigan offense just being stuck in first gear basically the entire portion of the game where the game was at all in question. I think that's Michigan because that's what a lot of what Michigan looked like against Fresno State. I think you don't, again, we say this a million times, you don't want to read too much into week 1, but when week 2 looks a lot like what week 1 led you to believe, it starts to mean more. The Michigan offense, I think, is just not very good this year. The Michigan defense, boy, if the Michigan defense was more Michigan than Texas, Michigan's gonna have a real bad time this season. I think Texas moving the ball on Michigan might have told me more about Texas and how good Texas's offense is than Michigan. It was notable to me. It wasn't like Texas just absolutely ran them over. They ran for 4.5 yards per rush, 3.5 yards per rush.
The 55-yarder.
It was the 55-yarder out of Wingo, the freshman wide receiver, who Ohio State was in on at one point, but ended up going to Texas. That was a big part. They didn't run them over. The
3 yards per carry aside from that, basically.
Yeah. So I think the interior of the Michigan defense is fine. They really didn't go after Will Johnson. Sorry,
not at all.
Yeah, they didn't. The only time I noticed Will Johnson in the first half was when on Texas's first drive, he dragged down a Texas receiver like 4 steps out of bounds and didn't get called. That was right before it was like 2 plays before Texas got called for holding on that play that wiped out the touchdown. That was a fortunate play for Michigan that they didn't get called for but probably should have been an unnecessary roughness penalty on Will Johnson on that first drive. Then you didn't really see him, and that was not, he's terrible, he was not a factor. No, they didn't go after him. But there are other guys to go after, and it just feels like I have watched enough Mets teams over the years to recognize a Stars and Scrubs team where it's like, we have Carlos Beltran, and we also have, these great pitchers, and hey, maybe the tail end of Mike Piazza, and then who are the rest of the guys? I don't know, but hey, look, there's Carlos Beltran. I don't want to call people scrubs, but it's like, boy, you've got the interior of the defensive line, you've got Will Johnson, you've got Makari Page, but boy, there's some spots out there where it's like, that it feels like if you're good, you can go after those guys.
Well, and to just stick with the baseball analogy, they're pitching around Will Johnson. There's no reason to throw to him.
Why would you? Yeah.
And we saw that you can move the ball down the field and create first downs and never even look his way. And they attacked Jair Hill, the other corner, redshirt freshman, relentlessly. They also went after Makari Page.
Mm-hmm.
And the tight end, Gunnar Helm, like he looked like the best tight end of the day. And we know Colston Loveland is very, very good, but they did some good things in this one. And we're able to do it like with averaging 3 yards a carry besides the 55-yarder. But I thought Quinn Ewers was very good most of the time. They handled the blitzes very well. They went to they took the swing passes were deadly throughout most of the game. And Wink Martindale is going to look at this one and chalk it up as a loss to Steve Sarkisian because he had Martindale's head spinning.
Yeah, and Steve Sarkisian is going to get the better of a lot of defensive coordinators this year. That does not necessarily mean that they're absolutely doomed. And I don't know quite what to make of their new offensive coordinator either, because I think there's a real talent issue there.
Yeah,
that is
hard to judge him.
Right. And let's go right to the super chat from Jordan Kapler, because this addresses part of the issue. The right tackle for Michigan spent more time laying on his stomach than upright. Line play was awful for Michigan. I'm really trying to find empathy. Oh, well. This is a Michigan team that has been able to do it a certain way. And they have not had great wide receiver talent over the last few years, but it hasn't really mattered, because if you have good enough line play and a good enough defense, and you're playing an offense that can't go up and down the field against you, you can run it 32 times in a row against Penn State in one of the tougher games on your schedule, and you'd be fine. They don't have the line that can do that this year. They don't have necessarily the defense that can do that this year. They don't necessarily have the running backs that can do that this year. And now you got to find, now the pony has to learn a second trick, and that's not necessarily going to be easy.
Please, no horse puns. But also, if you are going to run the ball 32 times in a row against this Penn State defense this year, you're insane after what Bowling Green did to them through the air. But that's another show. That's Penn State. That's our Penn State show at 4:45.
Nittany Lion Thursday.
Wow. But the Michigan defense really just did not impose their will at any point. Mm-hmm. And they tried, and the offensive line for Texas was great, and the offensive line for Michigan was not. And this was with the Michigan or the Texas offensive line, the right tackle committing 4 penalties, 1 hold, and 3 false starts.
They had a lot of procedure penalties and a hold. Yeah, it was, Texas. You looked at Texas and they looked very good. They're not, no one is I looked at Texas and thought, well, they're probably still going to lose to Georgia in a couple of weeks, but I think looking at Texas, I think I don't see anything that keeps me from believing that they're going to be in one of those semifinal games on January 9th or 10th.
I'm watching this and thinking there's going to be games involving Texas, Georgia, perhaps Ohio State, like all of these major teams like that aren't even in the championship game, and maybe not even in the Final Four.
Yeah, and
it's pretty amazing. I did check in. I had a NFL scout text me about the Texas offense or the Texas defense. He's like, they're good, and I'll remove some of the expletives, but the offense they were playing against was not very good. Mm-mm. So when you combine those two things, the Texas defense is going to look a lot better than maybe their skill actually shows, because you lose the defensive lineman that they lost last year, and it's going to be difficult. And we can talk about the Michigan running game, which again, Donovan Edwards, 8 for 41, a long carry of 12 yards. Congratulations, a season-long carry for him.
Yeah,
but they got nothing from Killel Mullings. They didn't have the ball long enough to establish any kind of run, but that's because they can't establish any kind of run, and they can't throw the ball a lick.
Right. Yeah. I did really bitterly enjoy the Donovan Edwards for the first time over 5 yards a carry in the week where I had a thing where I predicted three Ohio State running backs to outgain him on a per yards per carry basis by a certain number. Unless they run for 9 yards a carry or so, I don't think I'm going to hit that tonight. So we'll see. We will see. But yeah, if they thought Donovan Edwards was really the answer, you'd see more of him. You wouldn't see 8 carries. Now, falling behind as much as they did doesn't help. But did he? I don't think he had any carries in the second half, right?
Well,
see.
How do we get to the second half?
Not many. He had, Well, we're trying to figure out stat broadcast
Sure.
on a
Bear
on a
with.
tablet, but either way, they didn't. I mean, third quarter, Michigan rushed for one carry in the third quarter, one carry in the second quarter, one carry in the third quarter, one carry in the fourth quarter. That's it. He ran 3 times in the last 3 quarters of the game, and it wasn't, they weren't down 42 points in the second quarter. This is a team where their identity is smashed. That is the identity that Sherrone Moore has been screaming from the rooftop since day one. And your big star running back, who's on the cover of the video game, ran 3 times in the last 3 quarters, but it was 1 in each quarter. So it wasn't like, oh, he was hurt, so they didn't put him in. If he was hurt, they wouldn't have put him in. They just didn't give him the ball.
Yeah, and the one play where he almost breaks it, he gets tackled by the one tackler that is there, and only targeted once in the passing game. That's what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
He's not going to running between the tackles is no longer kind of a thing with him.
No.
Somebody's got to miss a tackle, and then he's got to be able to just bust out loose. But you can use him in the passing game the way Texas used their running backs in the passing game. Like Jaden Blue, 6 receptions in that game. It's just an extension of the running game, and Michigan needs every kind of extension of the running game that they can get right now. And whether it's RPO, whether it's swing passes, whether it's wide screens, there is nothing going on. And the lack of playmakers, they're not helping them with the lack of playmakers. And we talk about hard to judge Kirk Campbell at this point, the offensive coordinator. He's got to do more.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there, but you've got to do more with what you have, or at least try. Die trying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there were 2 options. They definitely died. They died doing something today. We got a couple super chats we got to get caught up on real quick. Mike Farino says, Wink might be Don Brown 2.0, wave 2 blitz heavy versus a talent equated team / Texas talent advantage will work well against weaker offenses. And that was kind of the Don Brown thing. Don Brown looked great. When they had a talent advantage, Don Brown looked great. No one's defenses looked more dynamic and aggressive and attacking than Don Brown. And then when you figured out, hey, if he's blitzing, you can just hit a mesh route behind those guys. Then you had a bunch of guys in red shirts running long distance on the field down below us. That happened a couple times. So we'll see. I have not been 100% on the Wink Martindale train this whole time. It has felt like, well, he's gestures vaguely. He's a Ravens guy, so I'm sure it'll be fine. It's like, well, okay, you can keep pulling guys out of that system, and it's going to work for a while, but it's not necessarily going to work with everyone who's ever been, who's ever eaten crab, with Old Bay on it before. Like you need more than just like drove past Baltimore this one time.
Watched The Wire once.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he feels like, he's got a decent personnel group to work with. It's not 11 All-Americans coming back, but he's got a good core of that defense, and they just had no answers.
Well, and the Texas offensive line is very good, but just looking what the Michigan defense didn't really see much from Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore in terms of creating havoc, and that's something they need to do. But they're going against some good tackles, and so you've got to they had to kind of blitz to do something, but they picked up those blitzes very well. And Quinn Ewers was finding guys and making Michigan pay. And so I don't think they need to be as blitz heavy moving forward. They won't need to do it against Arkansas State. Obviously, I'm fascinated to see what happens when USC comes to town, because they're going to have to dial some things up, and USC's got some playmakers. Like, don't let Zachariah Branch get loose.
No. I have a feeling Zachariah Branch might be spending a lot of time in close proximity to Will Johnson.
Johnsonville.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out in a couple weeks. But that's a game that I think before the season I was not as high on USC, and we'll see. It's week 1.
Yeah.
What do we say, Tony? You don't overreact to week 1. It was a win over LSU. It was a good win over LSU. We will see how good of a win it is. LSU might go 7-5 this year, and then it's like, well, okay.
But that's an SEC 7-5, so that's like a 10-2.
Yeah.
Anywhere else
in any other conference.
11-1 in the ACC.
Mike Ferguson says, "Clap be like they were so good. We have no idea what happened. We know."
Yeah, there've been some recalibrations on Michigan, I think, through this. When you get it's, I don't know how many. Well, in fact, 50% of the game day set picked Michigan. So I was just trying to say,
I
like,
saw that, and I thought,
don't know how many people
what
thought,
am I missing?
Yeah, like the fact that I should have put some money in the betting apps, and I did not touch anything. But like 6.5, 7 points for Michigan in this one felt like easy money. And to see so many people, it doesn't surprise me to see Desmond Howard picked.
Right.
Charles Woodson, Michael Phelps. I get it.
Mhm.
But you see other people that are doing this like professionally to look at these two teams and think, I like Michigan.
A real scholar like Pat McAfee,
Right.
Tony, you don't even know what to believe.
He's a punter.
If our intellectual bettor, Pat McAfee, doesn't know what to make of it, how are mere mortals like you and I to know what to make of it? Mike Farino says, by the way, Notre Dame down 10-7 in Northern Illinois at the end of one. Having seen 0 snaps of that game and just now being aware of the score, I will tell you this is Notre Dame's Week 1 game. Yeah, they played last week at Texas A&M and they beat Texas A&M. This is the game that you don't read anything into at all.
Right.
You don't want to overreact to the beating Texas A&M because again, Texas A&M might finish 4-8 this year. We don't know. We'll see how that goes. And
What if they lose?
If they lose?
Yes.
Well, yes. Then that losses count,
Okay,
Tony. Yeah.
right. So we can react to those.
Close gross wins or close
Against
for
the MAC.
close for 3/4
Yeah.
gross wins. Yeah. If they lose to Marshall, that's a problem. That when that happened, if you have a crappy close game, they had a crappy close game against Toledo a few years ago, I think, and you're going to have those. Sometimes the players are not going to take the opponent seriously. Northern Illinois is not a particularly great MAC team, so. But yeah, I don't put any real stock in that. But we'll see.
Those Falcons tried today, though. 34-27.
They were. That was. Save it for Penn State Tuesday or whatever
Sorry.
whatever it's going to be. But
I keep getting distracted.
I would like to. I was watching the Michigan game. My son kept flipping over to the Penn State game, and I'm like, well, I understand why you think this game is more interesting. It's not because they're going. I know who's going to win that, and I know who's going to win the Michigan Texas game too. But
yeah, but it's
as it turns out, I might be doing a live podcast about one of these in a few hours, and it's not the Penn State game.
It's just interesting. Former Indiana quarterback Connor Bazelak beating up on former Indiana head coach Tom Allen as a DC at Penn State.
That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot he was their DC. Oh man, I remembered that Manny Diaz left, and it didn't occur to me who their new DC was. Oh boy, that's perhaps they did not love each other hard enough. Perhaps that was the issue, Tony. Ryan Dawes says, Super Chat, Wink Martindale needs to stick to NASCAR.
This is where we need Kevin in here to explain the NASCAR references.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if he's been involved in that or something, or it's just his sunglasses.
Well, he did.
How many Wink Martindales are there? If there's another one,
yeah, there can't be another one. I don't.
Which
think.
door is the next one behind?
Yeah, well, I did look at his sunglasses and pull up the Karen on the phone with the police meme, and was gonna do a side by side, and I was like, that's probably not professional,
Yeah,
but
it's funny though.
It is
professionally funny.
That is the line, Tony. That is the line we perpetually try to toe.
Yeah.
Funny versus professional. Super chat from Mike Ferguson. Self-imposed postseason ban incoming. Speaking of which, I think it was 14-3 when I tweeted out, quote, parentheses, sets Google News alert for, quote, self-imposed postseason ban, close quote. Feels like, well, first of all, that's obviously the smart play, I think. If you are reading the Michigan situation as I think you and I are, I think that's the smart play. I think you maybe get some bonus points for doing it now as opposed to after you've lost 3 games. I am going to be genuinely curious how that idea gets talked about in the Michigan media circles that have been telling everyone that everything is nothing. There's nothing under, there's nothing under the, there's nothing in the closet. It's fine. Everything's okay. I'm going to be, because at some point you have to look ahead, because if you feel you're going to get a postseason ban, and you get a postseason ban for 2025, even if it's just a 1-season ban, and then you get a postseason ban for 2025, what does that do to your ability to patch the holes that they very clearly have right now? There's if Jaden Davis turns out to be a good quarterback, and we don't know yet, but if he does, then they have 1 quarterback on their roster.
Yeah.
And they've got whoever they've got coming in now. They had the the kid who was at Ohio State camp, but he's going to be a true freshman next year. You probably need to bring in a transfer quarterback. If you have a postseason ban looming for next year, who the heck is going to sign up to go play for a team?
Right.
You got 128 other teams you could go play for that can play in the postseason.
Yeah, it's not going to be an ideal situation to go free agent hunting and get somebody that can help you right now. But Davis Warren, here's the other thing. He's got another year or two of eligibility.
Yeah.
So what kind of situation are they going into if he is the starter all year long and then is the starter next year as well?
Well, I think they're going into a very similar situation. This is not necessarily a thing where the guy has these incredible talents, this incredible arm, this great elusiveness, this incredible speed. He's fine, but he's the kind of fine that's going to be, if he's a 75 right now, he'll be a 78 next year. Like, he'll be better, but he's not going to – there is not any – I don't think there's anything in there that suggests that they're about to unlock this absolute monster. He's going to be fine, but the standard at Michigan shouldn't be it's fine.
No, he's the guy that you're always trying to replace, and when you can't, you're like, hey, we got a veteran, we're good, but you're always trying to find somebody. You're trying to out-recruit him, recruit over him, replace him through the portal or whatever, but it's like, well, he's the back pocket guy that you're hoping that you'll have something better next year, but the experience that he gets this year is all going to be put to good use if they have to use him again next year.
Yeah, it was. It feels like there's not immediate help walking in the door there in any number of spots, and so it feels like they would be smart to self-impose a postseason ban this year, because you can look at it right now and say, okay, let's be realistic. The radio guys can be sunshine pumpers and tell you, like, oh, well, actually there's an incredible correlation between this, getting blasted off the field on your home field in an early game and winning the Big Ten. Like, sure there is. I think you have to be smart. And I think Ward Manuel is probably, Ward Manuel gave a statement a couple weeks ago, a week ago, where he basically, said, well, we have to follow the rules that we agreed to follow. And it's like that means something. If you're listening, he's telling you something there.
Yeah, we're going to fight it until but we have also agreed that any rules that were broken, we followed. We agreed to the rules, and I think that kind of went over the head of a lot of the Michigan side of things, where we're going to get the lawyers, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's like he's telling you right there.
Yeah, we
can only go so far with this, and if there are rules that have been broken that we've agreed to, then that's going to be an issue. I did see a Michigan media person tweet out that essentially it's going to be refreshing to talk about actual problems within the Michigan football program this week.
The Michigan program that's on 3 years probation right now and currently facing a notice allegation.
Super chat.
Okay, super chat. Super chat from our good friend King Bronco. I'll admit it wasn't great, but easy with the hee-hawing. Still 12 times national champs. Still beat Ohio. Ryan Day, soft. You not tough. So did Michigan look particularly tough and able to run the ball over Texas? Did Michigan look like they were dominating the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball?
No, and this is something where I think a lot of the Michigan side of things just expected Alex Orji before the season, like during the summer, during the spring, in the winter, we can just, even if it takes us a while to get the passing game going, we're just going to be able to run on people because we've got Alex Orji, we've got Donovan Edwards, we've got Kalel Mullings. That's all you need.
Yeah, what else do you need?
That's all you need. And the thing is, Donovan Edwards, and we talked about it in last week's Michigan Monday, which was actually a Monday.
Yeah.
20% of his career yards have come on 5 total carries. 10% of his career yards have come on 2 carries against Ohio State down in that, on this field.
Yeah.
So the consistency, like he is more what he's been this year than the star, the Don, all of the stuff that people say, because go look at all of his numbers, all of his games, all of his game logs. The outliers are the big games.
Yeah.
These are his standard games.
Yeah. Yeah, you are what you do. You are what the scoreboard says you are, and he's had a couple remarkable plays.
And that potential is always there.
Sure, it is.
But
what does potential mean? Urban Meyer has a saying. What does potential mean? It means you haven't done it yet, and he's done it on a couple different times. But that's, you hit a home run every once in a while. You hit a big home run, like great, you hit a big home run. That doesn't make you a home run hitter. You got to hit a home run consistently, and he's not. He just hasn't done
look
that.
at the home runs that Lenny Dykstra hit in the '86 World Series. He wasn't a home run hitter.
Yes, that's true. Yes, he 86 more NLCS, but hit one against Oil Can Boyd, I believe, in Game 3 of the 1986 World Series. Thank you for cheering me up, Tony. So let's get on to Mike Farino. Michigan should have tried getting McCord through the portal, though I hope he would have rejected them. Boy, wouldn't that have been a fascinating subplot? Here's the thing, though. Michigan folks, after last season, couldn't wait to tell you that Kyle McCord wasn't good enough to play at Michigan.
Yeah, that was emphatically that he was not good. But yeah, I wonder. Just go throw a poll out on Twitter right now, Michigan fans. Yeah. Would you go ahead and would you take Kyle McCord right now? And I'm just trying to see what his numbers were.
Well, while you pull up his numbers, I will remind everyone he has currently played Ohio University and Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech's win over Florida State is not necessarily looking quite as amazing as it did during week 0. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. And I don't even know when we'll see. Go ahead.
32 of 46 for 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 10 yards rushing with a long of 15. So he's thrown for 350 last week with 3 or 4 touchdowns and an interception. So
he looked great against the crappy teams at Ohio State too.
Yeah,
so they probably are not playing a team with a defense as good as Notre Dame was last year. They're probably maybe Miami. They do not have a very good schedule. I don't think they have Clemson this year. I don't know if they play Florida State, although that doesn't really matter at this point. But they don't have a great out of conference game. I don't think they play Notre Dame. They have a very schedule. So he might be able to get through the whole season, and they might be. Sorry, I've got sunscreen in my eye. If you're wondering why I'm wiping my eye constantly, they might be 9-3, and he might have real shiny stats and not ever having gone against a good defense. I will remind you, against Notre Dame last year, he won the game, but right before he was the hero of the game, a Notre Dame linebacker had 2 hands on a pass that would have been a game-sealing interception, and then he threw the last interception against Michigan was not on him. He got his foot stepped on by an offensive lineman. The first interception, it was probably on him. So there is, we'll see what Kyle McCord looks like against better competition. There are a lot of teams that a lot of players who can look great against iffy competition.
I will say I believe they end the regular season against Miami. So that's going to be an interesting one where we saw a former Ohio State quarterback beat Michigan today. Maybe you see a former Ohio State quarterback beat Miami at the end of the regular season. And because Miami is looking very good, I'm interested to see what they do this month to see if they continue looking good, but they're not going to get to play Florida every week either.
Yeah, speaking of teams playing against type and not overreacting to week 1, they don't have a great schedule. Florida State was supposed to be the tough game on their schedule. I think they do play Notre Dame. I think this year, maybe, but it's not. I'm not overwhelmed with Miami just yet. We will see. King Bronco says he placed a bet for Kyle McCord to be in New York for the Heisman. So don't spend all your money on that, because then you won't have any money to super chat us, and we would miss you. Mike Ferguson says, postseason ban, Doug, kick him off the tour.
I am very interested to see. It would be fascinating to be a fly on the wall the next couple of weeks as the decision makers start talking about the possibilities. And honestly, the conversation shouldn't have started now. They should have been ongoing, and maybe they are. But I said it before the season. If they start out 2-2, and now it's looking much more likely. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's just looking much more likely than it did before the season, because this is not an offense that is going to want to get into any kind of shootouts.
No, definitely not. They need to be able to play they need to be able to win games 24-7, 24-10. If games get into if a game gets into the 30s, that is bad news for Michigan this year. Very bad news.
And when they do blow people out, I think there's going to be some defensive scores in there where it just becomes a snowball effect. And like we've seen for many, many years, it's just this offense is going to struggle, and they're going to have to manufacture some things.
Mika Hanna says, why no mention of the scandal or NOA? I assume she means on the broadcast and not here. Yeah. The reason that there's no mention of the scandal or the NOA on the broadcast is because it's not brand new this week, and it's Fox, which is a Big Ten broadcast partner, who is, they're giving the Big Ten money, but also they don't want to tick off their broadcast partners. It's not new. There's nothing new to talk about there. You have an audience that, sure, there's a lot of Ohio State fans watching and a lot of Texas fans watching, but it's also going to be a lot of Michigan fans watching, and you don't want your Michigan fans to absolutely hate your broadcast. This is one of these things where when you're a TV partner, you stop being a true journalistic outlet where you're there to give the both sides and your primary interest in truth is truth. Your primary interest here is promoting your product, that this is a good product. This is why Gary Danielson spent 20 years telling you that no one could touch the SEC. And you don't hear that from Gary Danielson anymore now that Gary Danielson is on. He's still in the same network, but the network has a contract with a different league. And suddenly you don't hear how the SEC just is light years ahead of every other league in the world.
I did hear, I think it was on Sirius, like ESPN College on Sirius, crediting ESPN for going to a Big Ten venue for game day. I'm like, this is not promoting the Big Ten. This is promoting Texas going into a Big Ten stadium and winning against the defending national champion. So there's no, oh gosh, the great sporting world of ESPN being fair to everybody. They know what this was.
Yeah. Got a couple that we will here. We're going to just start with this one. I hadn't even seen this one until just now. Odysseus 2002 says it will probably be Tony Alford as coach in November. I assume that's a combination of either the speculation on the impact of the notice allegations and or the Sherrone Moore doesn't have a signed contract. That's not as uncommon as I think people think. He probably has a memorandum of understanding, which is sort of like a pre-contract, which I think does have some legal standing. Yeah. So, I think people heard that and thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And generally, if you don't have a contract like that, it's because there's not a huge rush. No one feels a huge rush to get this done because there's sort of an understanding that this is what's going to happen moving forward.
I think the story was that he is one of two head coaches this year that didn't have a signed contract. Mm-hmm. But then during the Fox broadcast, the pregame show, they did break news and say he had signed the contract, but that it's still being finalized. And so my question was, would this contract have been put in front of him to be signed if it hadn't been talked about? So the timing on that one is also interesting. But any contract with the wording or whatever is going to be, it's going to be put in there. If anything goes crazy and you're responsible for anything, then you can be fired for cause, as always. But this also might be one where, like, they wanted to keep Jim Harbaugh to like, you've caused this mess. You're not going anywhere.
Jim Harbaugh is in the escape pod, jetting off to his new home planet, and has left Sherrone Moore to clean up the mess on the spaceship. It is not great, but the idea of Tony Alford as coach, boy, how close we came to Kyle McCord as the quarterback for Michigan, playing for interim head coach Tony Alford in Ohio Stadium. Probably would not have been the warmest of welcomes, I'm guessing.
No. And at this point, with all of the suspensions that Michigan coaches have had, this isn't a crazy thought to happen. But it would be interesting. The pregame, the postgame handshakes going on with Ryan Day and Tony Alford.
Oh, boy.
Would be chillier than the weather.
Right. Ryan Day and Sherrone Moore, I'm sure, would have plenty to share. So let's run through a couple more here. Paul wants to know why I look tired. Early hockey game, early figure skating this morning, not hockey.
How'd you do?
So, working on that double axel, almost there.
Hit the thumbs up, please.
Oh yes, Doug with a great reminder. Please do hit the thumbs up for us. Make sure you're also subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that button, hit that bell, because we're going to have we will actually be talking about Ohio State football a little later on this afternoon. We'll have our pregame show, including an update on some injuries and the full availability report. That'll be coming out at 5:30. So we'll have to wrap this up pretty soon so we can start getting ready for that. Yeah. So we'll have that coming up in just a little bit as well. But so you make sure you hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, all that stuff. Make sure you also find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where we actually do most of our work. We're not actually on YouTube full time, believe it or not. Sometimes it feels like it, but you can
Saturdays it sure does.
It sure does. We already got that one from Mika. So we got JCM says, "Real talk, the Longhorns are a Final Four team."
Did you see anything from them today that would convince you otherwise, other than let's see what the path is and see what the matchups are?
Yeah.
But they certainly look like one of the 4 best teams. This was the kind of performance that you expect to see from a team ranked this high, as opposed to the Oregon performance last week against Idaho, where they didn't look anything like a top 4 team, and then they dropped in the polls because of it. But yeah, they sure look the part, and they've got a quarterback that can make all kinds of throws and all kinds of plays and deal with the chaos from a chaotic defense. I think that if you just let him sit back, he's going to pick you apart.
I love when the whole college football world comes together in all together. You know, in these times of such division, Tony.
Right.
PSU Jim says, "I thought PSU was bad today until I saw the Michigan score."
There's a win is always better than a loss. Any kind of win is always better than a loss.
Friendly Mango says, "Longhorn fan here. Just wanted to say I'm honored to have beaten your rival. I do hope you beat them as well. I'm rooting for you." See, Tony, setting differences apart. It's that is what college football is all about.
I can hear Lee Greenwood singing in the background. I just don't want it to go too loud so we lose our monetization.
And here's one more from Doug Shepard. "I don't know why so many Buckeye fans think fondly of Ewers. He screwed Ohio State over." I will say, we talked earlier about balancing humor and professionalism. I took a picture of the opposite side of the North Rotunda from the Archie Griffin statue and said, "This is where the Quinn Ewers statue is going to go," and then thought the better of it.
Walking in, speaking of the statue, it's fantastic. All people are lining up to take their pictures there, which is very cool. But you know, we said it at the time. Once Quinn Ewers decided to skip his senior season, his chances of ever playing for Ohio State legitimately or starting went almost entirely out the window. So I don't know that he screwed Ohio State. It's just the timing was wasted, and I don't know honestly if he doesn't graduate early, does he stay at Ohio State longer than a year anyway? Because Texas with Sark was he always wanted to be at Texas, but there were issues at that time.
Yeah.
He's not going to be moving ahead of C.J. Stroud.
No.
So why is he going to stick around?
Right. That's the thing is he came in and was 1 year behind C.J. Stroud. Ideally, if he'd stayed on schedule, he would have been 2 years behind C.J. Stroud, and then you have 1 year where I think everyone kind of knew C.J. Stroud was better than people thought, but people had a pretty good sense that C.J. Stroud was going to be pretty good. If he was 2 years behind C.J. Stroud, he comes in, he backs up as a true freshman, and then you have a decent chance to keep him for his second year if he's going to be your starter. And throwing that count. But as you brought up, he was originally committed to Texas. He wanted to go to Texas, ended up committing to Ohio State. Was that the off season that they had the transition to Sark from Tom Herman?
I believe so.
I think.
So there's just a lot of confusion in the air. It was the right time to attack the state of Texas. I mean, it would have been fantastic for Ohio State if they had Quinn Ewers last year. Didn't happen, and it's not like Texas won it all either last year.
No, they didn't, and they played a Washington team that was fine but not incredible last year. And Ewers is a very good quarterback. I don't know that just in terms of pure quarterback play, I still think I'm probably leaning on C.J. Stroud.
Oh yeah.
That he's probably still, even if those two guys are on the team together right now, it's still probably C.J. Stroud ahead of Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, and I don't know that you expected Stroud to leave after his redshirt sophomore year necessarily anyway, which clouds things even more.
So, all right. So I think we're kind of caught up on listener questions, but do please hit the thumbs up button. Hit that helps us with other folks finding the shows. If you're watching this on Twitter, if you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. That is the best place. It's the easiest way for us to interact with you because we get all of our comments from YouTube. So if you want to leave us comments and ask us questions, that's the way to do it. We're going to have the post-game show coming up after the game. Lots of coverage and interviews with players and coaches and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, post-game tailgate presented by Tailgate USA. Check it out. In the waning moments of the game, find us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. So that will do it. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.